Have you noticed a significant influx of Europeans into South America for some time now? And you haven't heard anything about it in the news? A brief preliminary note on this before I return to this idea later and examine it in more detail. Europe, and Germany in particular, has changed, very much so, and certainly not in a positive direction. I come from this country, where I was born and raised, but I haven't recognized it for quite some time. As you can see from the aerial photos, it truly has a lot to offer, whether in terms of landscape, culture, language, or people. Dozens of inventions and well-known musical works have their origins in Germany, whether it's the Otto combustion engine from Mercedes or classical works by Bach and Beethoven. In addition, fundamental psychological and philosophical literature such as Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, and Jung also originated in this country of thinkers and poets. But I must note at this point that explorers and developers have become very rare in recent decades. This is, of course, largely due to the state of education, which in turn suffers from the most intensive cell phone use by younger generations ever seen in history. But Germany and Europe are currently on a dangerous path, which I can only touch on briefly on this platform, as I would otherwise run the risk of harming the channel. Why am I reporting on this from abroad? I would like to share a few thoughts with the international audience, and perhaps also a few keywords for their own research, before they take this huge step toward a supposedly better future, plan it, and put it into action. My view is also subjective and is only intended to be food for thought. The above considerations have led me to write these lines from my South American asylum, because my soul currently feels more at home here. Do I miss my home, family, friends, and acquaintances? Yes, you can be sure that I am regularly overcome by a sadness that I can hardly describe. Nevertheless, due to previous professional stays, I feel quite well integrated into society, at least linguistically, which means that I am classified less as a tourist and more as something in between. Back to the initial question, have you noticed a significant influx of Europeans to South America recently? The reasons above could also explain this. Let me try to clarify this point and give a practical example. I recently met quite a few young Russian men in a hostel who told me similar stories. These people did not come to South America without reason, they actually feel safer here. And once again, you haven't heard anything about this in the news so far? Don't worry, unfortunately that will continue to be the case. Because there is no reason to provide the population with really crucial information. It is preferable to provide them with horror stories, such as car accidents or similar incidents in the neighborhood. In German, there is a joke that says, as long as you don't take away Germans' cheap beer and soccer, you don't have to fear any resistance from the people. And I now even think that this statement unfortunately applies to a large number of population groups, at least in the Western, capitalist hemisphere. What is also very important for me to mention in this, my first message to the world out there, is that I am well aware when creating this video that I am addressing a rather bright minority, perhaps currently between 15 and 25% of the total population. But since I explicitly prefer to address a qualified audience, because everyone else will probably turn off the video at the first sign of cognitive dissonance, I have to forego the quantitative majority of viewers for the time being. I regret this, but I hope that each and every viewer will think a little more deeply about this message from a European who has recently gone into exile. But where else to start if not with a small audience that you encourage to think more deeply about geopolitical contexts? These people must then carry the message beyond their everyday lives into the world, without coercion, of course, and hopefully through intrinsic motivation. As a teacher, I can say with certainty that this kind of motivation, which comes from within each individual, is the best foundation for learning and awakening processes. As world events are currently unfolding at a rapid pace, I would like to pick up on a few things in order to provide you with as comprehensive information as possible. I will report on the temporary disappearance of the Russian head of state, but the following event, which I will also elaborate on later, has at least as much explosive power not only for the situation in Europe but for the world order itself. France seems to be making serious efforts to withdraw from the NATO treaty. Why is that? More in the next episode. In future episodes, I would also like to introduce new ways of looking at our modern lives and, through reflection, strive for a healthier lifestyle. It's like going back to our roots, leaving the artificial big cities behind, returning to the village and to the more natural living environments from which we actually originate. I welcome feedback, including suggestions for new topics or topics that are related to this video. I speak 5 languages at least at the B2 level, according to the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. Furthermore, I am a trained teacher and therefore grateful for any inconsistencies that arise, as long as they are reported to me by the audience in a constructive and critical manner. In the next episode, I would like to report in more detail on the current political situation in Europe, which breaks your heart if you identify with your home continent. All information is handwritten and only recorded with the help of AI, because I have little practice speaking. If you don't like the voice or the speed of speech, I would appreciate your feedback. However, this should in no way detract from the content, on the contrary. Stay tuned and feel free to recommend my channel if you like the content and find it stimulates critical thinking about the situation. Because that is precisely the goal. I look forward to welcoming you back soon. Best regards from George in exile.